My son went missing on Christmas and I just found something disturbing in his room. I believe it goes without saying that every parent's worst nightmare is losing their children. 3 days ago, that nightmare became a reality for me as I took a single bite of Santa's cookie and went upstairs to wake my 2 boys up. My youngest, Clyde, had already been awake and sitting patiently on his bed, eagerly awaiting my signal to head downstairs and start opening gifts. This was not all too surprising. What 12 and 7-year-old boys sleep in on Christmas morning. What was surprising was that Jack's bed was empty. He was nowhere to be found, despite my tucking him in his bed and wishing him a good night around 9 p.m. the previous night. The detectives are supposedly still investigating, but I am fully aware of the horrifying statistic that after the first 48 hours of being missing, the chances of finding my son become very slim. I'm also quite sure that they still consider me a suspect, although their initial investigation failed to prove that. Earlier today, while helping Clyde with his math homework, I threw one of his little Nerf footballs across the room and after a couple bounces, it became lodged between the wall and Jack's bed. I walked on over and pulled the bed away from the wall a bit to retrieve it, and that's when I noticed the loose floorboard. I don't understand how this was missed by both myself and the detectives that scoured his room. But it was quite obvious once I did notice it. I believe what I found in there may have something to do with Jack's disappearance. Being a single father of 2 and working a full-time job left me very little time, especially around the holidays, to carry on the many different Christmas traditions that I had as a child. So on the first day of December, when I first saw the little ragged-looking elf on the shelf, I was very impressed that Jack had took it upon himself to start this tradition for his little brother. When I had first asked him about it, his demeanor changed drastically and he demanded that no one ever touch the elf. I left it at that. After all, the story says the elf will lose its magic if touched by a human. I didn't want to ruin it for Clyde, so I just played along. Each morning the little elf would show up in a new spot in our small home. I was so proud of my boy for being such a great big brother. The reason I bring the elf up is because what I found under the floorboard in his room was some kind of homemade children's book titled Elf on the Shelf. It was written crudely with different colored markers for each letter, although clearly written by someone with a very shaky hand. I handed the book over to the detectives, but not before writing down a copy for myself. I really don't know what to make of this, but I know it has something to do with whoever took my son, Elf on the Shelf. Have you ever wondered how anyone could know if you're naughty or nice each year as you grow? For hundreds of years, it's been a big secret. It now can be shared, if you promise to keep it. This year you were chosen. He sent me to you. I watch and report on all that you do. My job's an assignment from the big man himself. I am just his helper, a little scout elf. While I'm here visiting the place you call home, remain in your room. Be sure not to roam. Once you are ready, the mission can start. Whose name will you scream as he rips out your heart? Will it be Father or Clyde? He can't take you all, so you must decide. Each night while you're sleeping, to your room he will fly. No one can know, or else they will die. Of course a little magic helps me be quick. I record your whole day and report with a click. I tell him if you have been good or been bad. The news of the day makes him happy or sad. One word about this and I'll report to the boss. But keeping the secret will not be a loss. In the car, at the park, or even at school, word will get out if you break a rule. He will be gone before you awake. Speak a word to anyone and your brother he'll take. You'll jump out of bed and come running to see. Who'll be the first to beg and to plea. Maybe in the kitchen, the bathroom, or the den, is where you'll find dear Clyde met his end. I can hide on a plant, a shelf, or a frame. Where will I be? Let's make it a game. There's another important rule you must know. Choose to ignore it and his rage will grow. Keep your window unlocked before you climb into bed. Think wonderful thoughts inside that little head. How else can he check how good you have been? He might start to think you forgot about him. The night before Christmas, my job's at an end. The rest of the year, in paradise we'll spend, so blow them a kiss and bid them farewell. We'll fly far away but you can never tell. Of course they will miss you, but wait till next year, when the holidays come, I'll again reappear. I wish every girl and each boy a safe place to hide. Until next year when I visit young Clyde, I am only posting here out of complete desperation. If anyone knows anything that could help locate my sweet boy, please message me right away. A spy cam in my Christmas tree caught more than just Santa. Last year, on Boxing Day, I found a really cool ornament in a clearance box. It had a built-in camera to record a unique perspective on your holiday celebrations. I grabbed the last one from the store's dusty shelf and brought it home for less than $10. I forgot about it until my wife, my 2 daughters, and I decorated the house earlier this month. I told my daughters about the camera and said we'd secretly catch Santa in the act. I had an old costume in the attic and intended to deliver some gifts in full view of the camera on Christmas night. My girls were overjoyed, and went back and forth trying to find the best place to put the ornament on the tree. They had no idea Daddy repositioned it later so it could actually catch the living room and a good angle. In the nights leading up to Christmas, I turned the camera on to make sure everything was working properly. In the morning, I previewed the footage just long enough to confirm the thing was working. Satisfied, I inserted the micro SD card back into the ornament, and slipped in a new battery in anticipation for the big night. Daddy didn't want to disappoint his girls with a failed recording. We enjoyed Christmas Eve as a family, playing board games and eating way more junk food than there was room in our stomachs. Like we do every year, we let our daughters open one gift from Mommy and Daddy before going to bed. The girls, still riding their sugar high, could be heard giggling in their bedrooms from all the way up the stairs. From time to time, my wife and I could hear one of them shush the other, claiming she'd heard hoofs on the roof or bells jingling. Eventually, our kiddos dozed off. My wife kissed me on the cheek and headed to bed while I turned off all the lights. I retrieved the costume and tiptoed to the living room, getting ready for my big feature film debut. I did everything you would expect Santa to do. I ate most of the cookies, I drank the milk, I pet my large stomach and said my HOHOHOs, and I dropped a few presents by the fireplace, all in full view of the camera. A pretty good acting job. If I do say so myself, on Christmas morning, the girls came running into our bedroom to wake us up. They excitedly insisted we watch the video before opening the presents. I transferred the footage to my laptop, forwarded to where Santa showed up, and pressed play. My girls squealed with delight and jumped in front of the screen, frantically waving at Santa while obscuring the video from my view. It brought me so much joy to see how happy the girls were. I was too lazy to stop the video, so it continued to play in the background while we unwrapped out gifts. I spotted a box I had not seen the night before. It was a small and wrapped in a blue foil paper I did not recognize. My name was on it. But my wife seemed as surprised as I was to see it there. Noticing my confusion, my youngest daughter spoke, "Daddy, that's gotta be from Mr. Elf," she said, her voice cheerful and bright. I was ready to dismiss her elf comment as just another weird thing kids say, but my wife wasn't so quick to ignore it. "Honey, what elf?" she asked. My daughter pointed to the laptop. By then, the video had ended and all that was left on the screen was a preview of the first frame, the one that came with Santa. She answered. Panic struck me like a bird in a jet propeller. I know my wife didn't dress up as an elf. I scanned the video, clicking forward and back until I saw what my daughter had seen. There was someone in the living room. He walked into the corner after I had turned the lights off. He stood there watching me parading around as Santa. The video went completely quiet after that. It was as though the camera failed to record a single sound. The strange, tall man in an elf costume stood perfectly still for over an hour, watching the camera from a distance. After a while, he walked over to the plate of cookies and bit the head off a gingerbread man. I glanced at the plate and saw his teeth mark on the decapitated cookie. The man then quietly approached the Christmas tree. I thought the audio wasn't working, but as he reached the tree, I began hearing his slow and steady breaths. He reached towards the ornament. And the video stopped. In a terrified frenzy, I grabbed the blue box he'd left behind. I ripped the bow off of it and tossed the frilly thing away. I frantically removed the wrapping paper, opened the box, and looked inside. There, on a bed of bubble wrap, was the battery I'd put in the camera the night before. My wife took the ornament and opened the back. The battery was missing. I don't know what scares me more, what the camera caught, or what the elf might have done after he turned off the camera. If you find an unopened present under your tree on the day after Christmas, call the police. I'm going to make this as short and as clear as possible. If you find any Christmas presents under your tree after Christmas Day that you didn't place there, call the police. Leave the house immediately, and whatever you do, do not open the gift. I lived with my wife Maria and my 2 young boys in Melbourne, Australia. That's where my wife is originally from, and most of her family lives less than an hour from us. On Christmas Day, we usually have a lot of presents under the tree. Gifts from me and my wife, gifts from grandparents, gifts from the boys, all are placed there. That's why last Christmas, we weren't worried when I found a present under the tree that neither me or my wife had put there. It could have been from one of our parents when they came to visit on Christmas Eve. It could have been from one of the boys. It could have been from many people, and we didn't give it a second thought. It had no gift tag on it, so we decided to leave it there and not open it until we found out who sent it. So when I got up on the 26th early to make coffee, that was the only present left under the tree. It was a small box, maybe 6 inches tall and 6 inches wide, wrapped in bright red wrapping paper. There was a little green bow on top, and it all looked expertly wrapped. But when I came out into the living room that morning, there was something off about that present that I couldn't place. It wasn't until later that I realized the wrapping paper had been completely green on Christmas Day, and it wasn't until later that I noticed that red had leaked on the floor around the present as well. Throughout the day, our kids played with their new Christmas loot as Maria and I called different relatives asking if they left a little red gift under our tree. As the day went by and more family members told us that they hadn't sent a gift, we started to get confused. We weren't worried, but we were definitely puzzled. There had been no signs of a break-in or any forced entry. But the gift had to have come from somewhere. Mary and I spent the entire day trying to figure it out, and when night came around, we were mentally exhausted. We put the kids to bed, and followed soon after. Now I'm usually a pretty heavy sleeper, but something woke me up that night. I'm not sure if it was a noise I heard or if I just had too much coffee during the day, but I found myself wide awake at 2 a.m. and my throat was dry as hell. I finally slid out from under the covers and slipped into my slippers, careful not to wake Maria sleeping next to me. I walked out of our bedroom to the kitchen, almost slipping on some spilled water on the floor. Muttering a curse, I turned on the kitchen light and poured myself a glass of water from the refrigerator. I stood there in silence for a few minutes, drinking my water as I leaned against the kitchen counter. My mind was occupied with travel plans. We were going to Japan for New Year's, and when I finished the water, I put my glass in the sink and turned around to turn off the light. By chance, I happened to glance over to the hallway that connected to the living room, and that was when I froze. From where I stood, I could see right to our Christmas tree, and I saw that the mysterious present had been opened. And what I had almost slipped on, what I had first thought was spilled water, was revealed to be a trail of bright red blood leading from the open present towards the bedrooms. My body was frozen in shock for a few minutes, but I quickly snapped out of it. I grabbed the biggest kitchen knife we had and I crept over to the hallway, careful not to make a sound. My heart was racing as I followed the trail of crimson back towards the bedrooms, and my blood froze when I realized that it was leading me into the boys' room. I stood outside the bedroom doorway for a moment, trying to build up my courage for whatever waited for me in the darkness. Then I sprang into action, running into the room and switching on the lights in one quick movement. I had tried to prepare myself, but what I saw made the knife slip out of my hand and my jaw drop in horror. My boys had twin beds, one on either side of the room. Micah, the oldest, was on the left side, and Jamie, who was a year younger, was on the right. I saw Micah first, sleeping soundly and wrapped in his sheets. But when I turned to Jamie, I almost threw up. His sheets had been thrown off the bed and he was sprawled out across his mattress in an unnaturally rigid pose. His limbs were bent back in ways that no bones should be able to move, and his unseeing eyes were open and stared up at the ceiling. Blood covered his pillow, his mattress, everything. Attached to his neck was the most hideous thing I'd ever seen. It was like a cross between a leech and a slug, and was easily almost 2 feet long and almost a fourth of that in width. And the thing was latched onto his neck. It was smooth and slimy and dark green, almost the exact same color of a Christmas pine. But as I stared at it for a moment, I realized it wasn't attached to his neck. It was in his neck. The creature had torn open Jamie's throat, and had burrowed its head into the exposed wound. As I stared on in horror, I saw the thing pulse and writhe as it fed off of my dead son's blood and God knows what else. For a cursed minute, I couldn't move, I couldn't even look away. I stared on in frozen horror before I finally tore myself away and stumbled back into the hallway. I knew Jamie was dead without having to check, and I knew that I had to call the police. But I think I was going into shock, because all I could think of in the moment was to stagger into the living room to inspect the present. It was then that I saw that the box was logged through with blood, and the top of the box had been ripped off by the creature that was held inside. There was something in there that I couldn't make out, which the police later identified as a dismembered hand, most likely put there to feed the creature once the box had been sealed. Yet when I bent down to inspect the box, I saw a small scrap of white paper that was perfectly unstained by the blood. I picked it up with shaky hands, and I was barely able to make out the words written on it in impeccable cursive. This is the gift that awaits everyone on the naughty list, let it be a warning to you all. Cole is hungry, and he will feed. Merry Christmas. SC. The best Christmas ever. I smoothed down my red velvet dress. Mommy picked it out for me. She said she used to wear almost the exact same dress when she was younger. I feel like a candy cane with my brand new shiny white shoes. My hair is all done up with little sparkly clips. Mommy let me wear makeup this year. I did it just the way she does, with shimmering lip gloss and a lot of blush on my cheeks. I'm 9 this year, and I just know it's going to be the best Christmas ever. Christmas has always been a big deal in our home. We decorate the entire house with tinsel and twinkly lights. Mommy brought home a big tree that's taller than I am. We spent an entire weekend filling it with ornaments. Our house looks like Santa's village. I think Christmas has always been a big deal because it's also my birthday. Well, Christmas Eve is my birthday. So instead of waiting for Christmas morning, Mommy and I always open presents the night before. Some of the girls at school think it'd be bad to share your birthday with Christmas, since they think you'd get less presents. But Mommy always gives me the best gifts. Last year she got me a puppy. Tonight is Christmas Eve, and Mommy has gone all out with dinner. She made a turkey and a ham. For just us two. We also have the same sides and yummy desserts that we have every year. Mommy is wearing a green velvet dress and we look very festive next to each other. We laugh and eat until we're stuffed. Next it's present time. Mommy tells me that Christmas is about family, and that presents are just an added bonus. But it's hard not to get excited. She always gets me the best stuff. Please, I got Mommy something special too. Under the tree are lots of presents. I rip through them pretty fast. I get lots of new clothes and jewelry. Mommy also got me my very own makeup kit. She helps me put even more blush on my face. Now we have matching rosy cheeks. I saved the biggest gift for the last. The box is huge. It must be at least 3 feet long. This is a very special present, Mommy tells me. You have to be careful opening it. I slowly unwrap it. The paper comes away easily. Maybe it's another puppy. I lift the top of the box off and inside I see a doll. She's so lifelike. I reach in to touch her, but then suddenly I realize she's breathing. I gasp and draw away. Is she real? Mommy chuckles. Yes, Joy. She's your new little sister. Her name is Charity. She couldn't be older than 4. She is wearing a frilly blue dress and has soft red hair. My hands start to shake, but I still reach in and stroke her face. She is cold, but breathing. Her hands and feet are so small. Mommy sits behind me, smiling. I've given her a sleeping pill so she won't wake up for a few hours. But once she wakes up we can dress her up and introduce her to her new house. Where did you get her? She's perfect. I can't stop petting her. She swats at my hand in her sleep. The mall, just like where I got you. Mommy rubs my back lovingly. I frown a little. What if she doesn't work out, like my last little sister? Mommy stops rubbing. It's always a risk when you're shopping for new babies. The last one was just too noisy. I had to throw her away. But this one came without a fuss, so I think she's going to be perfect. I smile wide. Thank you, Mommy. You're the very best mommy in the world. I wrap my arms around her. I leap up. Oh, and I have a present for you too. I've been keeping it a secret for a long time. Oh. Mommy laughs. Yeah. It's in the basement. Mommy picks up Charity and slings her over her shoulder. The little girl's body flops like a rag doll. I grab Mommy's hand and we go down to the basement. It smells bad, so neither of us spend much time down here. That's why I knew this was the perfect place to hide her present. I turn on the lights and yell, "Tada!" The light illuminates a sleeping man slumped on the floor. He's tied to the radiator with my jump ropes. Boxes of cookies scatter the floor. I plug my nose. The man went to the bathroom right where he was and it smelled terrible. I start to cry a little. "I'm sorry, Mommy, I told him to keep himself clean." I step forward. "Wake up, Daddy. You have to meet Mommy." The man doesn't stir. I feel mad at him. I kick him a little. "Wake up, Daddy." Mommy puts a hand on my shoulder. "Oh joy, this was so thoughtful of you. But did you give him water?" I look up at her, tears in my eyes. "I gave him plenty of cookies so he wouldn't get hungry." "Silly girl, daddies need food and water." Mommy is smiling, so I know she's not mad at me. "I looks like we may need to throw this daddy away. He's gone bad." I pout. "I tried so hard to get you a good present. I did all the tricks you taught me and got him into the basement and everything. It's not your fault, Sugar Plum. Finding the right daddy is very hard. You know this, I've been trying for years." She tussles my hair. "I'll get rid of this daddy for you and then we can play with your new little sister." "Okay." Mommy takes my hand and we walk back upstairs. The lights are still twinkling and it makes me feel a little better. I'll get her a good present next year. I'll get her 10 daddies. And maybe one of them will tell me why my puppy won't wake up. I will never visit my grandma for Christmas again. I love visiting my grandma. She always makes the food that I like, and in large quantities, and spoils me. With the hustle and bustle of college life, it's nice to go back to my childhood and allow myself to be spoiled for a few hours every few weeks. Even though she has 6 grandchildren, she made it clear that I'm her absolute favorite. She'd often have the whole family around for dinner, and after they left, she'd bring out the good stuff she made just for me. We usually have a big Christmas dinner together with the whole family. However, as the years go by and the younger ones start growing up, fewer and fewer people show up. Last year, everyone already made plans, forgetting about poor grandma. I don't blame them, but they often forget how these visits mean a lot to her, especially ever since Grandpa died. That's why when I talked on the phone with her and she asked me if I had any plans, I lied to her and told her I didn't. She immediately jumped at the opportunity to politely invite me, going so far as to offer me to sleep over at her place. She said there's one room which hasn't been used in years and I could stay in there. I immediately said yes and agreed to stay over, realizing how happy that would make her. I canceled the plans I made with my friends, telling them something else came up. Although they were bummed about it a little. Their drinking party wouldn't stop because of me. That was the last Christmas that I would ever spend with my grandma. On Christmas Eve I arrived to my grandma's place and she greeted me like she always does, with a tight hug and lots of kisses. I barely even stepped inside when she started offering me food. She had already made what could only be described as an all-you-can-eat buffet. We dug in and once we were done, she showed me where I could sleep for the night. It was a cozy little bedroom, which apparently used to be my mom's room when she was little. Grandma told me not to leave my room during Christmas night in order to avoid disrupting Santa in his work. She said that if I really needed to use the bathroom I could. But to be extremely quiet and not to go downstairs. On the nightstand she left a list of the things I should do before I go to bed to ensure I get a good present. I decided to play along and abide by the rules. I told her I'd read it before bed and do everything necessary and she seemed content with that. She wished me good night and left the room. I was pretty tired from the trip there and the enormous dinner I've eaten, so I lay down on the bed and involuntarily fell asleep within minutes. I awoke a few hours later. I glanced at my watch and realized it was 3:01 a.m. I got up to grab a glass of water downstairs from the kitchen and groggily walked through the dark, trying to avoid any loud noise or turning on the lights. Not to wake Grandma. I went downstairs and turned on the kitchen light, gulping down a glass of water. I glanced towards the living room at the Christmas tree and something caught my attention under the glow of the decoration lights. There was a small plate, with the tiny paper that said for Santa. I reckoned it was cookies and milk, but when I got closer I realized that the plate was empty. Red liquid was in it, and right next to the plate was a small bucket. Obviously, I found this weird, but figured that Grandma may have just forgotten to put it away or something. I turned off the kitchen lights and returned to my room, just then remembering the list my grandma gave me. I grabbed it off my nightstand and started reading. Dear James, thank you for visiting me for Christmas. You made your grandma really happy. Now Christmas is a little different in this house than what you're probably used to, so it's very important that you follow these rules on the list. 1. Make sure to close your windows and ensure they are closed properly. These old windows don't work properly sometimes, so if you feel like cold air is coming in, let me know. 2. Don't put any wood in the fireplace after 9 p.m. Santa will be really angry if it's scalding in the chimney or if there's still smoke. 3. You didn't forget about milk and cookies, did you? I stopped reading and chuckled at the list. Grandma clearly wanted me to follow the basic rules for Santa like when I was a kid. But again I decided to oblige. I continued reading the list. In this household we don't use milk and cookies, we use raw meat and blood. I already left a bucket by the Christmas tree and there's a raw piece of chicken I put on the plate. Santa sure loves his diet. 4. If you are woken up by the sound of scratching or knocking on your window, ignore it. Your room is on the second floor, there is no way to reach up to it. In fact, it's best not to look there, but if you see someone beckoning you, pretend they're not there. They may try to open the window from the outside. This is why it's so important to keep the windows closed. 5. You may hear growling coming from the kitchen. It's okay, because Santa never comes upstairs, and since I already left the chicken for him, that should satisfy him. By this point I was sure Grandma was just messing with me. That was until I heard the sound of 3 gentle knocks on the window behind me. I froze in place, staring at the list, but practically staring through it. 3 more gentle knocks ensued, but I did my best not to give away that I heard them. Once again, there were 3 more knocks, and then the sound of scratching started. First gently and then louder, as if a rat was trying to bite through the wall. It lasted for around a minute until it completely stopped. Only when it did I gather enough courage to slightly shift my position. That was a mistake though, because when I looked down to the floor, at the light which was cast in from the window, I saw the unmistakable shadow in the form of a humanoid silhouette stretched across. I couldn't tell for sure, but it looked like whoever was there held both his hands on the window and stared directly towards me. I decided that the best thing to do is continue reading the list to try and distract myself. 6. If someone walks into your room while you're sleeping and you happen to wake up, pretend that you're still asleep. In the worst case scenario, the person will sit on the edge of your bed and observe you, so do your best not to let them know you're awake. If you feel their breath on your neck and it gets progressively closer, it means they realized you're awake. 7. You may hear me calling you from downstairs. Don't listen to it. I will under no circumstances go downstairs during the night. 8. Last and most important rule, if you get up to go to the bathroom, never ever turn on any lights in the house. He has trouble noticing you in the dark, but if you turn on the lights, he will be able to follow you wherever you go, and then not even locking your door will help. 9. Follow these simple rules and in the morning, we can open your Christmas presents. Love, Grandma. The scratching and knocking had already stopped by the time I was done reading, and the shadow from the window was gone. I got into bed and covered myself over my head, shivering, and not from the cold. Sometime during the night I heard my door open, but did my best to ignore the footsteps and low growling noise. I either passed out or fell asleep sometime later, but all I know is I woke up to the sound coming downstairs from the kitchen. I shot up, looking around the room and at the window, rubbing my temples and thinking about the nightmare I had. I left my room and immediately heard my grandma's voice calling me from downstairs to come open the presents. I told her I'm coming, when I suddenly felt a grip on my wrist. I turned around and saw my grandma there, staring at me, wide-eyed. She leaned in and whispered in my ear, with a trembling voice. "You turned on the lights, didn't you?"